to get our membership up and running very quickly. Also, because Placerville just opened a co-op, and they had some great success because they had a local supermarket that was struggling, and so they were actually able to just kind of take over, and they opened in like a year or two. So it just depends on how much networking we can do, what our focus is going to be, and how many of us are willing to work on it. With that, our mentor thus far, if I can call him that, is Chris Maher, and he is the general manager of the BriarPatch Co-op, and he will share with you some of the amazing statistics and some of the fabulous stuff that they've done around local and organic foods.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. It's really nice to come down to Auburn and get to see what I've had sort of awareness of, the movement that's taking place down here to address the issues of local food and sustainability in this community. BriarPatch has been around since 1976. Formally, it actually started a few years before that as just a simple buying club among a bunch of friends, Quaker friends, who wanted to get natural foods to their families and had no way of getting access to that food. In not too many years, that developed fairly well, and they needed some space, and they rented a sort of warehouse space out by Loma Rica Airport in Grass Valley, and outgrew that space fairly quickly, and kind of hopped over the next couple decades to different locations, growing with each move. Not getting profitable for 14 years in any ongoing ongoing sustainable way. A lot of people helped out along the way. Members contributed to support it. At one point, I was reading through old board minutes this past year and found that Joan Baez loaned the money at one point. So count her on your list of people you might want to tap. And then most recently, in 2007, the store had been experiencing just breakaway success at its location on small location, 6,000 square feet on Jaworski Drive up in Grass Valley, and had built up some cash and planned to move to a new bright, shiny, LEED certified building that's up by Sierra College. Has anybody here been up to BriarPatch? Yeah. Okay, so you guys have a good sense of what I'm talking about. You saw the hands that went up, so if you have questions related to what it looks like and things like that, you can ask your neighbors. As Jeannie said, there are a lot of different types of co-ops. Because of that, there's a lot of misconceptions about what a co-op is or isn't, or might be, or could be, can't be, etc. In a nutshell, one thing that I have to consistently reiterate to my staff and to the community and our shoppers is that BriarPatch is a for-profit business. That's one thing that gets confused a lot. Not to say that a co-op couldn't be a nonprofit, but in my experience, most food co-ops are for-profit businesses. I know of a few that are nonprofit. I know of a few that were nonprofit and became for-profit, and there are benefits and pros and cons to both choices, so that's something that gets considered along the way. There are the different types of co-ops are consumer co-ops. That's what BriarPatch is, and I'll explain it in a second. Worker co-ops, owned by the workers, and producer co-ops. So most of us know Ocean Spray or Land O'Lakes as a big national brand. Those are both co-ops. It's a co-op owned by the farmers who produce the cranberries or produce the dairy products, who said, you know, whenever we take our product to market, we have challenges with pricing, getting good costs on our inputs, all of the things that any farmer would face, and felt like they could do themselves well by forming a co-op together and marketing themselves in a collaborative fashion. So another example of this is that the BriarPatch, as an entity, is an owner in a co-op called the National Cooperative Grocers Association. And you'll see my nice logoed hat, which I figured would identify me well in this crowd. I didn't know anybody. This is not the BriarPatch logo, this is the logo of the NCGA. We own that. It does marketing for us. They produced a logo. If you've been in the store, you've seen we have bags that have this logo and have a list of all the co-ops in the West on it and say things about our business. They do training for our staff. We tap into them for those kinds of resources. So they fill a need for us. We are a consumer co-op, meaning that the people who use our goods and services are the people who own the co-op. That's not true of all the food co-ops I know. Probably the biggest point of reference for folks around here is the Rainbow Co-op in San Francisco. That is a worker-owned co-op, food co-op. Grocery store, you go in through doors, you got a ceiling, you got walls, you got all the products that BriarPatch has. You don't have to be a member. You can't be a member unless you fill out a job application there. You become a worker there and you can buy into the co-op. So those are the three main types of co-ops. One of the things I think that's worth it to point out, Jeannie talked a little bit about what's known as the three waves of co-ops in the United States. They're sort of like a few co-ops that formed in the mid to late 1700s, and then agricultural co-ops throughout the 1800s. And then when the Depression hit, there was just this incredible need. People were having difficulty getting access to food in rural areas where they weren't farming. So they began to form co-ops. Actually, I shouldn't say rural, urban as well. One of the big ones that was known was the Hyde Park Co-op in Chicago. President Obama was a member of that co-op, and all of the dangerous radicals that he likes to hang out with spent some time getting their food there. Sorry, my coloring is politics. The essence of it is that there's a need to be met, and the community comes together to meet that need. Jeannie mentioned utility co-ops. I think this exemplifies it really well, because you have a situation where people are living out. I was in New Mexico for a long time. A community called the Jemez, mostly based around an Indian pueblo with some outside settlements as well. They didn't have electricity well into the 50s, and they started wanting it. And they went to the power companies, and the power companies said, no, we wouldn't make the money it would cost to roll out that much wire. Back in 50 years, we're not interested in going out there. There's not enough of you. So the community got together and formed a utility co-op. And raised the money, purchased those inputs themselves, and created a power grid for themselves. So the point being that when a need exists, the community comes together and creates it. In the Depression, it was just food. They just needed food. In